today the only thing we have left to do is it says, what do I do if the factoring methods we've learned don't work? So, for example, how many terms does this polynomial have?
4.
Yeah, go ahead and get out your flowchart because you'll need that today, so you might as well just have it out if you don't already have it out. It has 4 terms. What does our flowchart tell us to do? Grouping. So let's take a look. Let's try and group this. Okay, so if we split it in half, split it down the middle, what's the GCF for the first half?
X squared.
X squared, which leaves behind x minus 10. But then what about the next half? Technically, we can always factor out a 1, right? But 19 and 30 don't have anything else, which means my second binomial is 19x plus 30. So does factoring by grouping work? No. So grouping does not work. So you kind of got a little taste of it on your warm-up today, but I want you to think about it like this. Let's say if I ask you to give me the factors of 246. You know 2, right?
2.
But then what about all the other ones? Do you guys have all those memorized? No, so what are most of you probably going to do? You're going to get your calculator, and what are you going to do?
Just keep on dividing.
Dividing, right? That's what we're doing. By factoring, by finding the factors, technically we're dividing. So if you don't have all those memorized, if you don't know the factors, what we do is we divide. And you'll just kind of check and guess your calculator, right? Do 248 or whatever number I just said, by 6, and by 8, and by 10, and see which ones work, right? Okay? So that's exactly what we're going to do today. We don't know. Grouping doesn't work, right? I don't know the factors. I can't figure them out. So we're going to divide, okay? So if you take a look at this one right here, find this on your notes. Now today, I'm going to tell you what to divide by, okay? In the future, in future tests, you'll be able to figure that out on your own. Once we learn how to graph, it's really easy, but you won't have to worry about that on this test. That's what Cole was asking you about earlier. So just kind of look, this is that one we just did, right? With the 19 and the 30. So grouping doesn't work. So what we're going to do, we're going to use synthetic division to basically divide it and see if it works. Just like we would in our calculator with a number back in like middle school, okay? So let's set up our synthetic division here. It would be, what would go in the box in the top corner?
Plus.
Yeah, set this equal to 0 and find the value of x that equals 0. So we get positive 6. It's always going to be the opposite, right? And you guys are pretty good at synthetic division now, so it would be a 1, negative 10, 19, 30. Leave a space, draw a line, and put a box under the last number so you don't forget that that's the remainder. Now, remember, one thing that happens with synthetic division sometimes is it'll miss a term. You have to put a 0, so just be careful. Did we miss any terms in standard form?
No.
No, because cube, squared, x constant, so we're good.
So what do we have to use synthetic for this? Multiply.
So the first thing you do in synthetic division, you get a freebie, right? Bring the 1 all the way down. And then you multiply. You multiply the number in front by the number that's down bottom. We get 6. And in synthetic division, we add down. So negative 10 plus 6 would be negative 4. And then we multiply that by the number in front. So 6 times negative 4, negative 24. And then add down, multiply, negative 30, 0. Now the most important, for today basically, the most important part of this problem is this right here. The fact that there's no remainder. Because what does that tell me about x minus 6? It is a factor. So that tells me that x minus 6 is a factor because it divides evenly. It is a factor of the polynomial that we started with.
What is the first one asking? Is a factor of the group?
Yeah, is it a factor? So your answer is yes, right? Of the divisor.
Of the divisor?
The divisor is the thing you're dividing by.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so divisor's not the right word
Yeah,
there.
that's what I thought.
That's just the polynomial up top. So yeah, x minus 6 technically is the divisor. So the verbiage isn't right there. And then how can we tell? How do we know it's a factor? The remainder. So we can tell because the remainder is 0. Okay? So now is the important, we need to kind of figure out what just happened here. What is the other factor? So we know for sure that this is a factor. What else is a factor currently? The answer, good. X squared minus 4x minus 5. That's the other factor, right? Because if I multiply those together, I'd get back to where I started. Just like division. Like you take the number 20 and you divide it by 4, what do you get? 5. That means 4 and 5 are your factors. 4 times 5 takes me back to 20. So we started with this big polynomial in front. We divided it by x minus 6 and got x squared minus 4x minus 5, which means those are the factors. If we multiply those together, we'd be back to where we started. We good so far? Okay, but it's asking, is this prime?
No.
So this answer that we just got, is that factor prime?
No.
No. It factors again, and it actually factors really easily, right? With the little bottoms up here. So kind of what we have right now, the two factors we have are the x minus 6. So what we were dividing by, x minus 6. And the answer, the other one in green, is x squared minus 4x minus 5. That's what we've established are the factors, so if those multiply together, then we'd get back to where we started. But we just said that this is not prime. So if it's not prime, that means you have to factor it further. And now what this does, what it's done is the synthetic division has kind of broken it down into smaller pieces, right? And the smaller pieces are easier to factor. And this one actually does factor. So what factors of negative 5 add up to negative 4?
Negative 5 plus 1.
Negative 5 and plus 1. So that is our factored answer. So we use synthetic division to break it into smaller pieces, and then we make sure those smaller pieces are factored all the way.
So when you say what is the other factor, do you put x minus 5?
Yeah, x squared minus 4x minus 5. So if you're watching the video, go ahead and do this one on your own. You can pause and work on it, and then play to see the answer. So we can see our synthetic division here. The remainder was 0. So therefore, the divisor and the quotient are our factors. And if you multiply these together, you would end back where? At the dividend. Good. So you can kind of see that there. But you might notice the answer that we got, the quotient, is not prime. Now that we've used synthetic division to kind of break it down into smaller pieces, kind of like gravel, that factors again. And it's once again, this is a pretty easy factoring. What factors of negative 2 add up to negative 1? With the divisor in front, right? So these three factors make up the prime factorization of the dividend. So basically, typically what I would say is you're going to divide by x minus 7. But what would I have to do to that to figure out the number to put into the box in synthetic division? You equal it to 0, right? And you solve for the value of x that makes it 0. They're just basically telling you the number now. So if there's not a factor there, that's called the 0. That is the number that x equals when you set that factor equal to 0. So that is called a 0. So easy, cheesy, lemon squeezy, long story short, they're just telling you to put a 7 in the box. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Now what you're going to learn about on the next test, we're going to do all kinds of graphing. And I actually like graphing because it's visual and there's a kind of a lot that it's kind of like a puzzle. When you put it all together, it all has to just fit. But what you're going to find out is so let's say I have the binomial x minus 7. what is that 0? In other words, if you set it equal to 0, what do we get?
7.
Positive 7, right? What we're going to find out is that is the x-intercept of a graph. In other words, what is the y value when we're on the x-axis? How would I write this as a point? Over 7,
0.
up 0. That's how it gets its name. It's because the y value is 0 when we're on the x-axis. So we call it a 0. Does that make sense? People ask us, we're like, why do we call it a 0 if it's the number 7? It's not 0. Well, what that's referring to is the y value. It's x is 7, y is 0. So we're going to kind of learn all about polynomials and their graphs, but basically that means that the graph crosses through at 7. Okay? But for this test, you don't need to know any of that. So for now, go ahead and do a synthetic division with 7, and basically the exact same process we just did. All right, so we started with the polynomial 10x cubed minus 81x squared plus 71x plus 42. We divided it by 7 as a 0, but technically, if the 0 is 7, what was the factor? What was the binomial that it came from?
X minus 7.
X minus 7, right? The opposite. So that's where Aiden got x minus 7 from. Okay? So now we have the quotient, the answer that we got, times the divisor are the current factors, right? But now, some of you see that this is a bottoms up, right? So what factors of negative 60 add up to negative 11?
Negative 15 to 6. 15.
So you wouldn't do it if it was just a 1. You just do negative 6.
Well, you have to do normal bottoms up.
15 and 4.
If it was 1, bottoms up is 1 times negative 6. What factor is negative 6? But this, you have to do the actual bottoms up. So what did you say? Landon, what did you say?
Negative 15 and 4.
Good. Negative 15 and positive 4. So negative 15 and positive 4. I put into my factors, so x minus 15, x plus 4. And I'm going to keep tacking on this x minus 7, because that is a factor. That was the divisor that I divided by from the very beginning. So it's just going to kind of follow us along the whole way. But I'm technically not done with bottoms up. What do I have to do?
Add a
Divide by a, which is 10.
Oh, I see.
Now, this is a good one because it reminds us to simplify. These don't come out to perfect whole numbers, but you still have to simplify. If I did bottoms up and just brought the 10 to the front right now, that would be wrong. Because what is 15 over 10 reduced to?
3 over 2.
3 over 2. And same with the second factor. How does 4 over 10 reduce?
2 over
2 over 5. And then you can do bottoms up. So my final factored answer is going to be 2x minus 3 times, 5x plus 2 times x minus 7. Those are my final factored answer. So the last one for today says the volume of the box shown is given by the expression volume equals 2x cubed minus 11x squared plus 10x plus 2. Okay? And then we get a picture of a box, and we already actually have a couple dimensions. So let's call this the length. Let's call this the width. And what we're missing, let's call that the height, right? So what is the formula for volume of a box or of a prism?
Length times width
This
times
is geometry.
Yep, so we're applying some geometry with some algebra here. So length times width times height, right?
Yeah.
Now what is the length? What have we said the length is?
2x plus 1.
2x plus 1 times, what's the width?
x minus 4.
X minus 4 times question mark. Now notice, what do we call these? They're the factors of the volume, right? So kind of the dimensions of the box are the factors of the volume. Does that make sense? Because if you multiply the dimensions together, length times width times height, you get the volume. So we need to do what we've done today and find the missing dimension. So we did our synthetic division, and the missing factor was x minus 2.
Wow.